absolutely wild as Verne Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania is still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back into AWA Unleashed. We are the preeminent #1 podcast dedicated to telling the stories and reliving the memories of the best territory in the history of the wrestling business, the American Wrestling Association, the AWA. My name is Chris Tubbs, and as you can tell, there's the slick one, there's the Polish one, but let's bring in the flying one.
And Numbnuts shows up.
The Numbnuts!
And
God,
there he is. Who's that old fart?
It's a Greg Gagne run-in. We had so much fun last week, Greg.
Yeah.
We've gotten the response absolutely off the charts. I'm excited for part 2. I'm gonna let you guys pick it up where we left off.
Well, I wore the same outfit.
We all did.
We all did.
Yeah.
We all did. Yes.
That's right. Greg, we got a great question. Part 1 here of the second part of the episode from Art Lazarus. Art wants to know, was there anybody that you found, and this I guess would be, behind the scenes or whatever, not just in the ring, any wrestler that was particularly difficult to deal with, anybody that you found untrustworthy or just had a problem with in general?
Oh, God. Hit me with that one. I guess the only one I can think of that I was nervous about Brody turned out to be no problem. Stan Hansen was a little tough. But otherwise, God, I respected so many of the guys and Professor, and if you just showed your respect for everybody, and you weren't, I'm Greg Gagne, Verne's son. In fact, I wasn't like that. That's not my personality, and I'm pretty easy to get along with most of the time, except with Mick.
You're not.
I don't blame
not the
you.
only one, Kurt.
I don't blame you. There, Greg. Shit.
Thank God.
Keep
I
the
thought I
streak.
was the only one.
No, keep the only one. Shit.
That's my church. I got along with everybody.
That line is going around the block now.
I guess there was, I talked about the incident with Root Bernard. I never really, I guess I somehow must have had respect from, the wrestling industry, the people in it. And I never really had a problem with anybody.
That's great.
There's some that, they were a little edgy and that, but, as long as you stood up to them, they usually backed down just because of the reputation we had of coming out of the wrestling camp. A lot of people were afraid of us. They knew we could handle ourselves. I didn't know that until, I faced Brute Bernard down in Atlanta.
Brute was not a small guy either.
No, but but you could tell it made him nervous. We confronted him. And that's what Verne said, you don't have to back down to anybody. You guys, the way you're trained, you don't have to be afraid of anybody. And, I was really nervous the first time I got around Brody, and Hansen, especially in Japan. I mean, they were gods over there. And as long as you fought them, And I mean, we fought them. I mean, we'd come out of there, you'd be black and blue from reaching up and hitting them. But they respected that. And you earned your respect in the ring and in the locker room.
Greg, did anybody
there, you never really had a problem.
Did anybody, any of the boys ever, either when you were wrestling them or watching from the back, anybody ever go into business for themselves in the ring and, you know, had to get kind of a dressing down from you or your dad or whatever?
Not really. I guess I tell you who I had a little bit of an issue with was Billy Robinson. Billy and I wrestled, you know, at Verne, so that night. It was an outdoor match down in Illinois somewhere. And I had to wrestle Billy through a 20, 30-minute draw. And Billy was the kind of guy, he had a chip on his shoulder. He always wanted to be the world champion. He even said to me one day, you know, your dad is yelling your friends, and if I don't beat them, they're not going to believe it. I said, Billy, I said, he wrestled at University of Minnesota. He wrestled on the Olympic team. They respect him. They don't think there's anywhere in the world that can do it. They're probably right. So I've seen Verne and the people that are a lot quicker than coming up. Everybody's up with a lot newer. He doesn't have to do that. So anyway, we wrestling in Illinois, and clean match. And Billy backs me into the ropes, and he hit me with an open hand. I thought he knocked my head off. I wasn't ready for it. And I came at him and ended up getting him in the ropes. And I just turned like I was going to walk away, and I turned around and I open-handed him, and he went down to a knee. I hit him that hard. But after that, I had a pretty decent match with him. But you're really always, everybody's leery of him because he hurt guys in the ring if you didn't get his way, you know, and you really had to protect yourself. I mean, he hurt Cosro in the training camp. He hurt Ric Flair in the training camp. You know, just take advantage of guys. I remember Cosro kept saying, well, you know, he was a Greco-Roman wrestler. Nobody can turn me. And Billy says, well, get down on all four. I'll turn you. Oh, Billy, you cannot turn. Well, you got down on all four. And Billy came and dropped a knee right into his thigh. And we were doing, you know, 500 to 1,000 free squats was our warm up. Our legs were real tight. And Cosro, he had a tough time walking for about 2 weeks. He had a horrible Charlie horse in there. And then he was showing us how to protect yourself on a bump. And he grabbed Flair and just did it to him without showing anybody anything. Dropped him on his shoulder, almost broke his shoulder. You know, and he would do that to guys in the ring. And that's why everybody was a little leery of being with him. I think that was the only guy that I was really, but you know, Verne back in the locker room after I stopped, he says, good job.
Al DeRusha, I once asked Al, because I'd worked for years with Al. I asked him once, give me somebody who was just a pain in the ass, and he didn't hesitate, and he said Billy Robinson.
Yeah.
That he just a different character. Al went as far to say just didn't have any respect for him.
No, Billy didn't have any respect for anybody in the business. That was his problem. He was an arrogant son of a bee. I mean, he really was. He was great in the ring, great technician. But, Nick had good matches with him. But a lot of the rest guys didn't even want to get in the ring with him.
Well, let's talk about another guy. Bruce Anderson has the question.
Bruce who?
Bruce Anderson.
I think I know Bruce.
Yeah, you sure do.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've stated that you're, to this day, you're still friends with Hulk Hogan. Bruce is asking, how were you able to maintain that friendship given the whole circumstances of him leaving?
Well, I don't know if I'm still friends with him. I think I am, but I've sent him a couple messages and he never got back to me. So, I don't know. I don't think I've ever said anything to demeanor him, because he was, to me, he turned what wrestling is today is what Hulk Hogan made wrestling it today.
Yeah.
Without him, it would never be where it got to. And he was a phenomenal talent. And the only, I guess, advice I tried to give him one time when he left, I said, Hulk, there's no problem with you leaving. You just fulfill your commitments and then go, and you won't have any problems at all. And I got to go right now.
Oh, come on.
And I said, well, that's not the way you do business. And I think down the road, it's going to hurt you.
Well, I remember
that was about the last conversation I ever had with him. I saw him a couple of times. Seemed okay. I've sent him a couple of messages though, and he hasn't got back to me. So I don't know if there's something that he thinks I did or whatever it is. I don't know.
Well, when I was with doing the production with the AWA, would have been maybe 88, 89. I remember the deal that we were trying to put together with WGN and getting Hogan to come back. Can you sort of talk about that whole situation?
Well, WGN, they were going to do we were going to do a big thing with them, but we also had the network banging at CBS that wanted to do it. So we were going to put our syndicated program on with WGN and make kind of a different type of format for that. And then, 6 months down the road, we had the thing coming up with Bockwinkel and Hogan. That would have changed the whole AWA and probably the whole footmark of professional wrestling if he'd had hung in there.
Yeah.
Because that in April of, God, what was it? When did he leave?
End of 83?
83, that's what I was thinking.
End of 83?
End of 83. And in 84 would have been the big thing on network TV on CBS. And,
this deal with GN, I was with the AWA, and I didn't start until 85. And I remember, I think the guy out of Roy Nelson. No, Roy was he was an attorney. He was when I first started there. Bob Sayers.
Bob who?
Bob Sayers. He had gotten us a syndication package, but I thought he was involved. But this is like in 88, 89, and it was sort of trying to get Hogan to come back from the WWE.
Yeah, he wasn't leaving there. There was no way.
Yeah, it felt like he was using the AWA to try to leverage himself to get more money with the WWE or WWE.
I really wasn't privy of all that. We weren't in on the conversations. I don't know if, I was kind of the contact to Hogan, and he'd quit really answering anything that we did. So, it would have been great. But, if he'd have never left and just hung in there, we'd have done that thing with CBS. McMahon wouldn't have been able to do what he did.
Greg, did Jesse leave kind of the same terms, the same way that Hogan did? Just out of the blue?
I don't remember how Jesse left. Jesse's Jesse. He's one of those guys that hard. I get it. Everybody has an ego. Some guys' ego gets in the way of themselves. And I'd say that's Jesse Ventura. I try to get Jesse on board with our Power Town. Did I tell you this story yet?
No.
Okay, so I called B. Adonis, Adrian's wife, and she's hurting a little bit. And I said, well, we want to do a thing for, Adrian. I'd like to do an action figure of him and Jesse as the East-West connection. And, and you'll reap the rewards of it. And we had a really good talk and a good relationship. So then I called Jesse and I told Jesse, hey, Jesse, you got to get on board with Power Town here. I want to do a thing with you and Adrian. If B is hurting and she really needs some help. Why would I want to do anything for them?
Oh,
that's what he said to me. And I said, are you effing kidding me? And then he talked for 45 minutes. I never said another word. And I talked to him, I don't know, a few months ago. Same thing. Again, they asked me to, see if we could get him on board. Well, you have to talk to my son. He handles all my stuff. And then he talked for 1 hour. I never said another word. Just listen to him talk on how he could help Trump out by being the vice president, and went into his whole political deal and what he's done and how good he is. And it went on and on and on. So I really don't have any feelings towards Jesse Ventura. I won't say how I really feel. But
yeah, don't hold back.
Here's a guy. Adrian, without Adrian, Jesse's just another guy.
You're right.
He couldn't go in there and have a 45-minute match with anybody. Impossible. And Adrian, he carried that team in the ring. Adrian wasn't the talker that Jesse was. Jesse could do the talk, but then you had to have the guy that could do the walk, and that was Adrian. And Adrian Adonis was a phenomenal talent in the ring. There weren't too many timing-wise as good as him. He was phenomenal.
Greg, I watched the TV title match you had with Adrian from the Showboat in '87.
That was a tough one.
And at this point, Adrian certainly, I don't know how much he weighed at that point.
He weighed over 300 pounds.
Oh God, he had to be easily.
It was horrible, and they wanted him and I because the kind of matches we had, and we just couldn't have a match with him like we used to have. And he was huffing and puffing in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt so bad, McMahon talked him into that gimmick that he did, kind of the Gorgeous George type deal, and acting very feminish. And that wasn't Adrian. Like Verne used to train us, guys, inside of you is who you really are. And until you let that out to the public, you're never going to have any success.
Yeah.
Adrian went from being the dock worker, the thug that would break thumbs in New York, and all of a sudden he's doing the flower shop in WWF.
But that was McMahon. That's his philosophy. Everything was a character. Everything was, you build this character. You can't build somebody that really inside they're really not.
Yeah.
And that's what Verne used to tell us. There's a real you. And when I started training kids, you know what I'd do? I'd take them out and get them drunk. And then when they start talking, I said, now that's the real you. Now, if you can project that to the public without drinking, you got a home run, buddy.
Oh, that's great.
You're going to have all the tools in the ring, but now you have to, it's true. When you have a few drinks, hey, here, this and that. Shit, yeah, that's who you are. So I've done that with a number of guys that I trained. When I was training down at WCW, I'd take the guys out and get a couple of them, get them drunk. The more drinks they had, they'd keep getting louder and louder. And finally, at that point, I said, now the real you is coming out. Can you project that on TV without drinking? Tell me how you really feel. In fact, there was, I forget who it was. they were really struggling doing their interviews when I was working for the with New York. And I said, give me an interview and tell me how you really feel about Vince McMahon. Because she's always bitching about Vince. He gave me that interview and I let it go and put it on. And shit, made him right after that.
Wow.
Yeah. But, everybody has that. Joe, you have it in you. Mick, you have it in you. The real you, something to come out, you've done this enough that your real personality is coming out. But when you first get in there, you're a little inhibited. You know what you want to do and what you want to say, but it doesn't come out right because you're not being the real you. As if that makes any sense to you.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while for, I think, almost everybody, when they get in front of that camera and try to do a promo. And Shawn Michaels is somebody I think of right away. When he and Marty were doing promos, when they first got together, they were all right. They were good. Well, look what happens. You get a little more comfortable, you get a little more seasoned, and then you saw the Heartbreak Kid, and Shawn went on to, the career that he had. But yeah, there's some, and I've said this before too, Greg, somebody has said, it's, easy to do a promo or to do an interview. Well, put them in front of the camera, and you'd think that, they're going to be great. Then all of a sudden they see that lens, they see that little red light, and then it becomes hi, my name is Joe.
Yeah.
And I'm going to beat that guy up. But then there's others that, and I'll use Baron as an example. Jim off camera is just a quiet, stoic, very dry, humorous type of a guy. Then he gets on camera and boom.
I'll tell you a story about him, okay? Verne trained him.
Yep.
And Verne was having problems he was just Jimmy Rashke from Nebraska, So Mad Dog tells Verne, he says, let me take him up to Canada for the summer. Canadian, the summertime drew really well up there. So Mad Dog took Baron up there as his partner. He was up there June, July, August, came back in September. And when he came back in September, he was Baron von Raschke. He wasn't Jimmy Rashke from Nebraska anymore. Mad Dog turned him into, they had riots up there in Canada.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he said it was unbelievable. But he said it took him about a month and a half to get him really rolling. And after he came back from there, Mad Dog taught him who was the real him. And it came out of him. He was a phenomenal interviewer.
This is what amazes me about so many of the guys that have that talent. And I asked Baron about this. It was a AWA roundtable in Waterloo, probably 10, 12 years ago. And I asked Jim the question. I said, how do you do it? How can you be sitting there, this quiet, reserved guy, and Brody was the same way, this quiet, reserved guy, and once you hear the announcement or those lights turn
red light goes on.
Unfreaking real.
Yeah. That's when the real personality comes out. But a lot of guys can't let that happen, and they never make it in wrestling. My dad was really worried about Baron that he wasn't going to make it. But when he came back and, Mad Dog doing his interviews up there and getting Baron a lot rougher in the ring than he was before he left.
Yeah.
He was like Mad Dog when he came back. And he did a phenomenal interview. But the light finally went on him on who the people really perceived who he was. And the real him came out.
And that is all the people need to know.
That is all they need to know.
There it is.
Yep. Greg, I got a question from Eric Brooks. He says,
Eric?
Greg, as you have wrestled in other territories like New York, Madison Square Garden, and Mid-South Coliseum, and Memphis, And as far away as Japan, how were you received by the fans away from the AWA kingdom?
Just like I was in the AWA. I'll tell you an interesting match in Madison Square Garden. I was on the second match with Johnny Rods.
Yes.
And Vince Sr. was alive at the time. So we went out there and we had about a 14-minute match. And when I came back to the locker room, Vince Sr. said to me, "What was that?" And I said, "That was a wrestling match." And he said, "How are my people going to follow that?" And I said, "That's their problem, Vince." We had Johnny Rods, and he was just a TV guy, come in and make everybody look good. And I sold for him, and we had a hell of a match. We had the people standing, and he gave me one of the kind of comebacks that I know how to make. And we had the place rocking and rolling. And we had a 14-minute match, and I'd say we captured the people at about 6 minutes. In the last 8 minutes, we just took them on a ride.
Wow.
Greg,
So,
I got
that was the difference, between McMahon's approach to professional wrestling and the AWA. Verne was a wrestler, and you had to be able to wrestle. In New York, their style was punching and kicking.
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example. Verne would send Billy Superstar Graham. He would go up 6 months before he's going up there. They'd send him up there to do interviews, and then after 6 months, he'd come in and be right on top. Vince sent us Pedro Morales, their world champion. He never made it past the third match on the card. It was a whole different style.
Yeah.
He'd go into Denver, where they're a fanatic wrestling crowd, and the punching and kicking, they sat on their hands, and that was like the whole AWA territory. And we'd go in there after them and just rock and roll and tear that place down. But it wasn't punching and kicking; it was wrestling and selling and credibility. And it was a whole different philosophy than what New York had.
Greg, I remember when Morales came into the AWA territory, and I talked about it on the podcast. Here you got a champion from another league coming in. He got a smattering of applause. I mean, he just got nothing. No. And I thought, this is Pedro Morales. The fit wasn't there. It was a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, and it was like, without in Denver he'd be huge, but Morales and a lot of the Mexican
sure
it's out there, and no, it's like a fart in a bottle.
I think that happened to Mil Mascaras here too.
Yeah.
He came in, cup of coffee. I mean, you turn around and he's gone. But I remember being surprised. There was just no crowd reaction for him whatsoever.
No, but I mean, that was the different styles. Now if they'd have gone, Verne would send talent to Eddie Graham, and Eddie would send talent up to Verne, and it was the same philosophy, and the talent got over right away. Same thing with Stu Hart and Joe Blanchard down in Texas. Those are some of the guys that Verne worked with, sent them talent. And to the Crockett's, he sent them guys just, they were supposed to go there for a year or two just to get the basics and then come back. And, half the guys that went there never came back. He sent Ole Anderson there, Lars Anderson, Gene Anderson,
sure.
Flair, Steamboat, and the more current ones, Mulligan, Lanza. They ended up coming back, but
right.
A lot of them didn't. I mean, those guys built that territory for the Crockett's. Crockett's never really developed anybody. They didn't train anybody.
No, I think you can, the proof is in the pudding. You look at, I mean, Verne has this list of legitimate superstars over the years that made millions in the business, won championships, main evented everywhere, and you don't see that coming out of anybody else.
No, not then. Now WWE now has realized that. You know, they've got their NXT and they've got their development group. I sent 3 people down to them, and Tiffany Stratton, which I trained here, Rampage Savage, who they never gave him a shot, and JDX. Now these 2 guys have so much potential, and they work so hard. And I sent them down. They went down. I called Triple H, and they gave him a shot. They went down to Florida. They were there the first day, and they did some interviews. The second day, they were a half day, and a hurricane hit. So they sent everybody home. And they've never given them another look. And these 2 guys could be as good as most of their roster. And I can't get them to give them a chance. Tiffany, they took, you know, she was a gymnast and all that. She's got that background. They like now to take college athletes and bring them in because they have that background, and it's easier to train than guys that, you know, just coming off the street. But I mean, these 2 both were athletes. They weren't, you know, major college athletes, but shoot, they should get an opportunity. They're really good, but they're not going to get it.
I see them all the time for MEW, Midwest All-Star Wrestling. Both Rampage and JDX. I mean, they're great kids. They're terrific in the ring. They know the psychology. You brought up Tiffany Stratton, which is interesting because we had a question about Tiffany from Pam Powell. Pam says that she knows or heard through the grapevine that you trained Tiffany Stratton.
Yep.
And not that long ago, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, you and I had a conversation about Tiffany Stratton and kind of the attitude that she came in with, which was not exactly old school attitude. Talk a little bit about her if you can.
Her parents, a friend of mine knew her parents, and he called me and he said, "Would you train this gal?" I said, "God, you know, I really don't want to train anybody at this stage of my career. It's so hard." So I talked to Ken Anderson. He had a camp up there, and he had 2 guys, this Rampage Savage and JDX. He said, "Would you mind helping them out?" I said, "No, I need somebody in there with her to help me, you know, show the holds and the moves and everything else." So we get up there, and I got those 2 in, and we were doing, you know, 3-4 times a week, you know, anywhere from 3 to 4 hours in the ring. And about, I don't know, the second week, she shows up late, and she crawls up on the apron of the ring, and she lays there, and I said, "Come on, get your butt in here. Let's go." "I'm too tired today." I said, "You're too tired? Then get off the ring mat, get in your car, drive home. You're done. You're fired." "What?" I said, "Get out of here. These 2 guys have been on the road. They're tired as hell too. But if you want to, do you think you're going to go to the WWE or wherever you think you're going to go? And just because you're tired, you can't perform the next night? You got to do it every day. Get your ass out of here." 3 times I fired her. The 3rd time she came back, she left for about 10 minutes. And she said she was too sore. I said, "Get out of here. Go home. I'm done with you." And Ken Anderson, "Jesus, she's got some potential." I said, "Ken, this is the 3rd time. I'm not going to put up with her shit. I'm not going to waste my time on some woman that doesn't want to put in, you know, what you have to put in to get into this sport." He said, "Can I talk to her?" I said, "I don't give a shit. Go talk to her." I don't know if she left. I told her to go home. So he tracked her down. She was out in her car, and she came back about 10, 15 minutes later and apologized, got in the ring. And I said, "Okay, this is the 3rd time. The next time you're done for sure. So better get with it." She was a natural. She was a gymnast. When I'm teaching these guys the bumps, I mean, she's bing, 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 learning the holds, bing, 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 bing. They were struggling, and they had been wrestling a while, and they finally got it but she caught on really quick. So then it was funny because who was talking to me? They were talking about Tiffany Stratton. God, that attitude of hers. I said, well, that's the real her, guys. They don't tell her to do that. I said, no, that's her. What you see is what you get with her. And she's got that attitude. And I told her, I said, just go in the ring with that attitude. You'll be just fine. I thought they'd get all over her ass. She'd say something, but she learned not to say anything, but she got that arrogant attitude about herself that she's better than everybody else. And,
jumps right
so
through.
Really, it works well for her, and she'll be their champion here pretty soon.
Natural born heel.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Without a doubt.
So, Greg, next question I've got, or that we've got on here, is from Terry West, and actually was going to ask it as well. At this point in time, if Triple H came to you and asked you if you'd be interested in opening and running a farm system under the banner of the AWA, which the WWE now owns, or they're a conglomerate, what would you say?
If he asked me,
Yeah.
well, if they're going to pay me well, I'd say sure.
Great answer.
But I'm not going to go do it for nothing. My body just can't do it. I have to have a couple of young guys. I would take JDX and Rampage and use them to help train the guys. You need somebody that can actually do the stuff. And I've taught them, they can do all the holds and they can do all that, and they got all the new stuff that they do, the flips and flops that they have to do. So I'd say and I got 2 guys here. I want them to help with the training, and I want you to pay them, and then I want you to give them a shot when we're done with the camp.
Talking about Rampage Santana, I work with MAW quite a bit as well. And every time, well, I shouldn't say every time, but a lot of the times that I see him, he's got his T-shirt. I'm a Greg Gagne guy. Love that. Just love the respect that he has, not only for the business, but for the generation that came before him. Yeah.
They learned quite a bit of old school wrestling from me, which they had no background in it at all.
Yeah.
They could do the flips and the flops, but they didn't know when to do something, when not to do it. And, that's the art of wrestling, is when to make the move and when not to make it. And being able to get the people, the fans watching into that, not only your personality, more so into that match, telling that story in the ring. And they've lost a lot of that storytelling. I see with Triple H running it, it's I think better than it was.
Yeah.
Much better.
Mm-hmm.
That strap match that they had with McIntyre and CM Punk was ungodly, but the guys sold it. That's what they don't do anymore. They do it in their pay-per-views. They don't do it in the TV to get them established. They're doing a little bit more with Triple H in control and Shawn Michaels.
Well, and I would say about those 2 guys, you've got 2 guys who get it. Now, me personally, I'm a huge Drew McIntyre fan. I mean, he's got the look.
Yeah.
His promos are phenomenal. When I see him on the screen, I believe that he is going to legitimately kick somebody's ass or do it. Just
that whole Samoan group. I mean, they got a hell of a group there. From Roman Reigns on down. I mean, the talent roster they have right now is the best I've ever seen. And some of those girl wrestlers, God almighty, they are phenomenal.
Yeah, they've definitely come a long way.
They really have. And, and they're training them hard. And I think a little different than they were training them before. And I've seen a big change in it since Triple H has taken over, and I like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you know, I to get me to like it took a long time.
Well, it went from before women's wrestling. I mean, it slowly evolved before making the big jump that it is right now. But women's wrestling was always treated as a sideshow attraction, a lot like the and politically, you know, I'm going to go with what we used to call the midget wrestlers. They were brought in as just something different and entertaining. It wasn't part of the main run, and that slowly changed. But in today's wrestling, you're right. I mean, they are a part of.
Oh, they're a big part of it. And they've done a phenomenal job. And they're great athletes that they're bringing in. You know, they get the background with the gymnasts, the track girls, a few bodybuilders, but the girls are exceptional, and they have created actually, you can do a TV show of your own with the girls.
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought, Greg, that you'd see the women headlining pay-per-views?
Yeah.
I mean,
Back
in the 60s, 70s. Yeah. Well, I'm going to.
Rhea Ripley, I'd put her in there with any guy.
Oh my God, she is phenomenal.
You see her throw those guys around? Holy shit!
God, she's
and Bianca Belair and Jade Cardwell. Holy!
I got to bring up the one thing before we get to Mick's question. I'm going to say that Sherry Martel sort of started this evolution. Can you imagine if Sherry in her prime would be a part of the women's stable in wrestling today?
Well, she would be. What's the group that wear the masks? They just brought him back. The feud with Chad Gable.
The Wyatt Six.
Yeah. And Mickey
and Nikki Cross.
Holy balls, she wild.
Yeah,
that was the most fantastic thing I saw. And she's part of that group. She is wild. She really. I mean, the whole crew is really good, but man, she really stood out.
Yeah, add Sherry into that mix. Oh,
scary Sherry.
Yeah.
Let's take it down a notch and ruin the mood here a little bit, because I've got a question. And I'm sure this will hit home with you, Greg, from Zachary Lee Higgins. I have heard over the years of a guy named Dale Gagner, who insisted he was related to your family, running matches under the banner of AWA Superstars of Wrestling. Was he a legitimate relative with any connection to you or Verne?
No connections at all. He's a fraud. He's been doing this for years and years and years. He is not related to the Gagne family, has no ties to us at all. He's a bullshitter. And I'd like to grab him by around his neck, show him the Gagne sleeper.
Well, no,
he's horrible. He has hurt our name. He has hurt the industry, and he is not related to us. And if he comes near you, run.
How did he get?
I wish I had something nice to say about the guy, but I don't.
I think you just did. I think that's about as nice as it gets.
Yeah.
How did he manage to get the AWA name in the first place?
He doesn't own it. McMahon owns the rights to it. He bought it. They probably don't even know the guy. I mean, he's so small in the industry. If you even want to put him in the industry, he just rips people off, puts on these cards. I don't know if he even pays the guy. I mean, he's just a con artist. And if McMahon's group knew he was running around as the AWA, I mean, they don't. They got bigger things to worry about than that little fart running around doing that.
And he has been sued and lost in court that I know of twice.
Yeah, well, you can't use that. I mean, it's, you can't steal somebody's copyright. and the man owns it. So
he's been everything from your cousin to the latest that I came across was that he was your brother.
next time he gets near, let me know. And we can go down and make a little visit, pay him a little visit.
I'm slipping one last drop.
I'd like to make a comeback at 75. I know I can handle it.
Oh boy.
Horrible. Stay away from him. Run as fast as you can. If he comes to any of your companies and he tries to sell you a deal that he's the AWA, don't pay any attention to him. Get away from him. He's bad news.
So let's get back onto something really good.
Did I make that clear?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. You could have been a little bit more forceful, but you tiptoed around it a little bit.
All
but
right.
yeah.
Well, now we have
Now you get me all fired up about that. Yeah.
Well, Greg, I mean, we've spent a couple of hours.
Who the hell brought that up anyhow? What was that guy's name?
No idea. He didn't listen. You've been shitting on that guy for 35 years. You know what?
So,
All right,
Greg,
let's try to move on.
we had you for a couple of hours, and I know I've asked you about this before, but
My ass is getting pretty flat from sitting in this chair.
we're almost done, my friend.
Are we?
David Selcho wants to know, and I want to know as well, and get this for the record. Have you ever considered writing the definitive book about the behind the scenes of the AWA?
No.
Why?
I don't want to sit down and write a book.
Well, I get a ghostwriter and just sit on your ass, get
I don't
it
do that
flatter.
either, because ghostwriters aren't going to tell it the way it really comes out. You know, they do it. They put in their interpretation of what you're telling them. And, you know, first of all, I have a lot of friends that wrote books, and they monetarily, it hasn't worked out for them. It's a lot of time and effort. If I was going to do a book about the AWA, I'd probably call on George Shire. And George knows the history and knows the AWA as good as well as anybody in professional wrestling. But I wouldn't want to put that burden on him because I don't think it would sell that well. You know, for the effort that you put in it, you want to get rewarded. And, you know, it's so many years past.
Yeah.
AWA was out there. You know, how many people really want to hear about the history of wrestling? A lot of fans would, but it wouldn't capture the market that you need to get to monetarily help you out. And when you put that kind of an effort in it, you want some return on that.
Yeah.
And I just don't think you would get it. I
Well,
mean, you know, and it's a burden to write a book. It takes forever. I mean, this Brian Ferguson just wrote a book on Verne.
Yeah.
You know, now he's looking for funding to get it. If I'd have known it needed funding before he put it out, I'd have never let him do it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I see him on Instagram asking for funding to help get the book out. And he spent a lot of time writing it, and he used George for some of the stuff. And I spent a lot of time with it. And now the guy doesn't even have the wherewithal to get it out on the market. Yeah, you know.
Let's finish up by putting the photograph up on the screen here, and I want to ask you about this one.
It better be a good one.
It's a good one.
You know,
oh, listen.
you and I, we'll have that cage match.
There is not a part of me that you haven't kicked it.
I don't
Now
know
there
if
it
you
is.
can get in.
That's the picture. That goes back about 14 years, and that is Mitch Paradise on the left, and that guy on the right in his street clothes, that madman that came into the ring and is throwing a drop kick at Mitch Paradise. Now, you had been retired, I don't know how many years by that point.
What year was it? Do you remember?
This, I believe, is 2010.
Holy balls.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wayne Carty, Curtis.
Yep. Wayne McCarty took this picture, and I believe that was at Lakeville High School. And Mitch was a heel, and Greg Gagne came into the ring and shut the heel up here. I just want to know at this point if the opportunity presented itself. And we've talked to Brunsey about this, and he says he's never going to get in the ring again and try to do anything again. What the hell are you doing throwing drop kicks going into the 2010s? And would you do it today?
That was before I had all my back surgeries.
Oh, there you go.
I've had 5 back surgeries. I was supposed to go in a couple weeks ago for a shoulder replacement. I had to cancel that because I've still got trouble. They want to do another back surgery on me. I'm trying to avoid it. So I'm going in next week to do a burn on my nerves because I get cramping down the left leg and down the right leg. Can't get rid of it.
Yeah, but wrestlers don't get hurt.
If I got in that environment, I probably would try to throw a drop kick. And then I'd hit the mat and I'd go, what the hell am I thinking about? But I still could probably take the guy's head off.
Oh, my God. I love it. Let's talk about
it's so hard to get
look
around.
Look at this, Greg.
It's so hard to get around the sport, though, and not get involved. Because
I love this picture.
That adrenaline just gets going in you.
Well, you started at an early age.
That's why I hate to go to those things. I always get involved. Yeah, there I am. Hammerlock and Verne. I think I was
Hammerlock and Verne.
6 or 7 years old.
Oh, my God.
Minneapolis Tribune put that on.
What I noticed is Verne's not selling too well.
No, he never did. You know?
Oh, boy, that's the definitive comment from the past 2 hours. Verne never sold.
Oh, he did.
I know he did.
Say that, but you know, for us, he never would. Holy
God.
Christ! When that camps he'd put us through, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week in that old barn with no windows on it. We went from the end of September to March 1st. It'd be 20 below zero. And we'd do an hour of calisthenics. So usually it had to be an hour of squats. We had to build up to do 1,000 free squats. And we had sweatsuits on. So as we got progressed in the thing, and now we're into the winter time, he would put one guy in the middle of the ring, and the other 5 guys would stand on the outside. And we've just been the bumps, and we're learning the arm drags and the holds, and we're sweating like crazy, and we're wringing wet, 20 below zero. So maybe Kaiser would get in the middle, and then the other 5 would be on the outside of the ring. It'd be Flair, Patera, Bob Bruggers, Brunzell, and myself. And then one guy would go in, and Kaiser would be in there, and Verne would say, lock up, take a headlock, shoot him off, 2 tackles, hip lock, arm drag. And the guy would go 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes nonstop like that. And then Kaiser would stay in, and number 2 would get in. Did I lose you guys?
Oh, we're still here.
We're here.
Oh, shoot. There it is. So Kaiser would go through all 5 guys. So you'd be in there for about 25 minutes. And you'd get out, and you have to get at the end of the line on the apron. And the next guy would go in. Maybe Flair or myself, whoever was next, would go in. And the same thing. Well, the guy at the end, by the time you got to the front to go in, the sweatsuit would be frozen, be stuck to you. And then Verne would always, when you get in, he'd say, body slam.
Oh, great.
And you felt like that cartoon character. You feel the ice in the sweatsuit just go.
God bless him. God bless Verne.
That was our routine. Everybody had to go and be in the front. With the front guy, you were in there for 20 to 25 minutes and sweating your ass off, then get the end of the line and let the sweatsuit freeze on you, and then get called. Oh God, we all hated that. But it was
Greg,
fun.
Yeah, we're about the end of our second hour. I personally
Maybe no more. You're cutting me off. I got
we could go for hours.
That damn Mick Karch. He got me in.
We can't afford you.
You're not paying me a dime. You can't afford me, and you can't pay me. We're all in trouble.
Al DeRouche is at ringside. It's a 1 hour time limit. We're only 45 minutes in, but 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, we're going to shave time a little bit. Yeah.
All right, good enough. Well,
But
thanks
Greg,
for having me on, guys.
Well, let's talk two minor things. We got to, again.
You told me it was done. Now you want minor things.
Well, hey, but
now
this is
now it's overtime.
It's overtime, yeah. Now you're going to get 60 cents an hour.
Joe,
the bell has rang. The bell has rang. Now we're doing, we're setting it up for the next angle. Let's talk about your podcast with Magnum TA again. Just tell us a little bit about, what you guys cover, and so forth.
We cover everything. We cover the WWE, the matches. We don't cover, they want to cover AEW. I can't even watch the program, so I don't even want to talk about it. They have some good talent down there, but the way they're running that operation, I can't watch it. So we talk about what's going on in wrestling, talk about the individuals. We talk about past things. We talk about the personalities that we were around. TA, his guy that took him under his wing was Dusty Rhodes. So he's got a lot of great Dusty stories. We tell some of the old stories on some of them. I tell some of the Mad Dog stories and the Crusher and all that. And we talk current wrestling and past wrestling. And Magnum TA is just a phenomenal partner to have on board. He handles all the business part of Powertown, which if you haven't, you got to, everybody out there that's listening, go to powertownwrestling.com, where wrestling lives on. And my job was to capture the talent. We've signed 255 people on board. And we started back in the 50s. The people that built this industry, the Luthez, the Verne Gagne, Killer Kowalski, Don Leo Jonathan, Yukon Eric, Hardboiled Haggerty. And it was very interesting because I would spend anywhere from 8 to 12 hours on the phone every day. Because when I got a hold of these people, they were so excited that we were going to represent the people that built the industry. And they start telling stories about them. And my God, one I really remember was Yukon Eric's wife, or Don Leo Jonathan's wife. Called her up and she answers the phone and she's, I said, God, are you all right? And she said, Greg, you caught me right in the middle of my workip. She's 85 years old.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow. And then we'd talk for an hour and, it's fabulous stories, fabulous time in professional wrestling. And we are representing those people that started this industry and built it up to where it is. Our first 6 that came out were Verne, Luthez, Hanson and Brody, Kerry Von Erich, and Magnum TA. We try to take a few from the 50s and kind of blend in with the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And number 2 is coming out. Each one of these molds costs us $27,000 to make. And in the industry, in the action figure industry, everybody is calling us. They say they're the best on the market.
They are, bar none.
Bar none. You get the real deal when you get these. So now we've got companies calling us. So we're kind of expanding. We're doubling up with another company that's doing IA or AI. What is it?
AI.
Yeah. They're doing that. They're going to use our people in that. We've got Bruce Lee and a lot of others calling us and want to get on board. So it's growing, and in the next 2 years, you're going to see what Powertown's all about.
Well, Greg, you've signed 250 plus wrestlers, but I will have to say, thankfully and gratefully that you signed, one Polish guy to become a part of Powertown. And for that, I thank you.
Was that Ivan Putski or Igor?
Ivan produced.
Oh, you're talking about yourself. Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, it's been great. I've enjoyed it. Powertown has been fun, and seeing the product that we're putting out. 2025 is going to be a really big year for Powertown. So
Yes,
I'm looking forward to that, continuing to work with you on that. But
Well, we appreciate all your hard efforts, Joe, because you're doing a great job, according to TA.
I'll have to give him a quarter as well after I pay you a quarter for staying an extra hour.
Oh, you're down to a dime with me. I'm going for the big money from Nick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That'll happen. Greg, before we let you go, and this is coming.
Penny laying around.
This is coming from my.
You've saved everything you've ever had. You never.
I'm telling you, Greg. In all seriousness, and
I am being serious.
I have an opportunity to do this now publicly. In June of 1987, I got a call from you at my full-time job, and you asked me if I would like to come down. I know, mistake of your life. If I would like to come down and audition for the ring announcer job on ESPN. Well, I couldn't get out the door fast enough.
Really? I didn't remember that. Did it really?
It was you. And
I must have been drinking, or
of course you were. You were hired in the company. You didn't know what fucking planet you were on. And then I went down an audition that I had to look at Sold Out Houston off mooning me. As I'm cutting an interview with Nick Bockwinkel. That was my audition. But in all seriousness, I can't thank you enough. I'm an AWA guy through and through. I always will be.
I know you are.
You know what? But not only your dad, but you. I tell everybody. Greg gives me shit. I had it. Verne gave me shit, but I would not trade a minute of it. It was an absolute honor to work with you guys and to be associated even any way remotely with the AWA. I'm very proud.
Well, I want to say this, and I don't say it publicly too much, but you've meant a lot to professional wrestling in the AWA. And you've been a fan for such a long time and such a big part of the history of the AWA, along with George Shire. You two are just, you'll always be in our hearts, okay?
Thank you.
No matter what I say to you and how I kid you.
I love it.
I'm serious. I'm serious about that stuff. I mean it.
Thank you, Greg.
No, I mean what I'm saying. You've been a terrific asset to the AWA and to our sport in general.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now you can kiss my ass.
I know. I was getting the chapstick ready.
Did I say it the way you wrote it?
Yeah, you did. You missed a couple of spots there, but that's fine.
We'll go over that later.
That's fine.
It wasn't written out word for word. Those were the bullet points.
Oh man.
Chris, go ahead
this has been great. We can't thank you enough.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope you do well with the program. And let me know if you need anything else.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate everything.
Chris, thank you very much.
No,
you did a great job. I didn't hear you much, but you must have done a great job with all the switches. And Joe, thanks. Great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate your time.
Good enough. Say hello to my buddy.
Which one?
The newscast, the sports announcer.
Oh, Max.
Oh, Maxie.
Maxie. Carrot head.
Yep. Thanks, Greg.
He gets on TV one night, and I look at him and say, he's got red hair.
Hey, it happens. It's.
He's a great guy. I love Maxie. Please say hello to him for me.
Will do, Greg.
All right, guys. Greg. Take care and have a good day. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
There he is, the one and only Greg Gagne. And I said it leading into show one, guys. If it wasn't for Greg Gagne and Verne Gagne and the AWA, I would not be the wrestling fan that I am today. And they absolutely are an essential part of the history of professional wrestling. If you're talking about the legacies of families in wrestling, if you do not have the Gagnes in your conversation, then your opinion doesn't mean jack shit. And that is honest to God. how I feel, because you go back, I didn't know as much about the AWA as I do now, but I knew that there was a lot of things that there are people like me, guys, that are on the younger side of the spectrum that really want to appreciate and learn about the history. And my God, the last 2 weeks to hear it from Greg and just the passion that he has and the stories that he has, I does not get any better than Greg Gagne talking about his dad, talking about everything in the business. You cannot get a better representation of what we want to learn in the history lesson than what we had the past 2 weeks.
You know what's interesting, guys? We wanted to get Greg on the show for a long time. And, there's been a little bit of trepidation. We've shared that on the air here, because Greg has, done a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews over the years. We weren't sure what Greg Gagne we were going to get. Well, I'll tell you what.
We got fantastic.
A++ Greg Gagne. And thank you, Greg, for your honesty, for sitting with us for a couple hours and shooting the shit here. And I tell you what, Greg and I have needled each other back and forth for 37 years. And I wouldn't trade a minute of it. And he's a class act. And hats off to Greg Gagne.
Well, while I mostly agree, I got to say I'm a little bit disappointed. Why, you might ask?
Why?
I want another 6 hours.
Oh my God! Yes.
The questions. I'd love to get his take. Okay, let's do rapid fire. Superstar Billy Graham, Mad Dog Vachon.
Oh my God!
Yes. Give us your take. Give us a story. And that's why I would love to have a book. But I have another idea for Greg. I might pitch him. Let's sit down and let's do a shoot interview. And let's do it over a couple of days and get all of this recorded. I'm going to work on that.
This was a shoot interview.
I'm talking more than 2 hours. I'm talking like I would need several SD cards to record the duration for the conversation and the questions that I would have for him.
How many gummies would you have, though, Joe?
Oh, I might need to have 3 or 4 of these containers to do it. No, I wouldn't need anything. That would be pure adrenaline to lead into that.
What I love about Greg Gagne is his defense of wrestling.
Yeah.
And he's an old school guy, yes. And that was ingrained in you if you grew up in that era.
Mm-hmm.
But you see the passion, you see the heart, you see the soul, you heard it from Greg Gagne. And we've talked about it, guys, the detractors that he's had, they don't have a goddamn clue what they're talking about. Greg Gagne is a credit to the business, the real deal.